Okay, everybody can see the screen, right?
Yep.
All right. So like last week, the idea here is to provide an overview of the UE-NIB subsystem. There's a lot of similarity to the topology subsystem, but unlike topology, which is kind of primarily intended to be a repository for kind of the major network assets, the UE-NIB is designed specifically to hold information about the user equipment, which is the handsets or the IoT devices which connect to the network, and it's therefore specific to the RAN subsystem. Even though I suppose it could be used also to hold information about hosts, any arbitrary hosts as well. Mm-hmm. But it's primarily designed with the RAN subsystem in mind. Now it's based on similar concept as the topology subsystem in a sense that the principal place to store information is the aspects, and we'll talk more about that later. But there are some key differences between the topology subsystem and UE-NIB subsystem. First of all, it's designed to be to hold highly volatile information, and therefore it is not designed to provide the kind of the sequential update guarantees as topology subsystem is. So it's basically designed to be a little bit sloppier but faster. But same as topology, it's supposed to be extensible to hold arbitrary application-specific data using the aspect mechanism. And like with the topology, it's based on a very, very simple CRUD API with, again, ability to watch for events. The UE-NIB entities, now when I say entities, it's really an overstatement because the message that, or the object, the GRPC object that holds the information has just two fields in it. One is the ID, which identifies the user equipment. And then the other one is a map of the aspects which hold the rest of the information. So basically all the pertinent information is stored in aspects outside of the ID. There is no type, there is nothing else. There's, clearly there's no differentiation about, like with topology, we have the entities and relations. There's no such thing here. It's just the UE itself and all of its aspects. Just like with topology, the aspect is a structured message, GRPC message. It is stored as its JSON implementation. And while the kind of the core schema provides some RAN specific aspects like cell information, cell connection, slice information, etc., applications can bring their own to the table, defined in their separate protobuf namespaces. And just like with topology, same similar kind of design philosophy should apply, that aspects should be concise and they should avoid mixing of the miscellaneous topics together under one umbrella. Again, this is purely also for reuse too. And also it's actually almost more critical here because the information is highly volatile, and given the fact that that means it's expected to be mutating very, very often. And the basis of update is an aspect. Mm-hmm. And so the smaller it is, the less chance of wiping out something, especially in a absence of consistent update guarantees. Mm-hmm. So basically updates will succeed all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The GRPC API, this is basically it. It's very simple, CRUD. Slight difference between the topology, if you notice. The topology was returning an array of objects, which is not really necessarily scalable approach. This actually will return you a stream of objects. And this is kind of the enhancements I was talking about, modifying the topology to adhere more to that pattern. But we'll have to do it to make sure that we don't break backwards compatibility. But this is a little bit cleaner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the replay is there.
And the replay is there. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So just like with the topology API, the create, get, update, delete operate on a single UE entity. List returns a stream. Now, the stream in here, there's no filtering mechanism, but instead there's kind of really only one dimension to the filter, saying the aspects that you're interested in. So really the unit of update and also unit of retrieval is an aspect. So the ID is really just an umbrella for aggregating all of the different aspects together. Exactly, it's basically federated set of data federated around the ID.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And so
so doing a guess will get you all of those aspects for a particular UE.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can update more than one aspect at a time.
Yes.
You can. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And I don't think I've included the message formats in this presentation, but we can take a look at the actual code later. Similarly with the watch, right? The watch is very similar with the replay and filtering by aspects that you ask for. And this way you can get only the objects which are populated with information that you care about and or understand. There's no need to pay the overhead of extra stuff. And this does have implications on the internal implementation, basically, because the ID is just an aggregation. And so we actually do maintain an index of all of the aspects to be able to support efficient iteration, efficient get for a single, let's say you want to get, let's say, certain set of aspects for an ID. And actually there is a way to obtain also all aspects for an ID.
Right.
And in order to support that feature, we actually had to implement an index where we were able to basically tie the set of aspects to that particular ID without having to iterate, do an exhaustive iteration. Right. So basically, given an ID, you always, on 0.1 scale, you could always find all of the aspects.
Okay. Sorry, I missed, I think you probably said it, but on the watch, the updates will be per aspect.
Yes. Yes, you will actually get notifications per aspect.
Per aspect.
Because that's the unit of update. Yeah. And since those are the events.
Right.
But if you let's say you ask for all of the aspects, I believe that the initial replay you'll get the aggregated.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But when you get the individual updates, they'll just come arrive at the single.
Yeah. Yeah. The single one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is, because the information will come broken up. If the application does require to, let's say, collating from multiple different aspects, they themselves will have to form some sort of an index on the side if they want to, let's say, require two separate aspects to be able to process the information into something. They'll have to have some sort of a momentum on their own side.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
As with the topology, it's straightforward set get on the UE protobuf message itself. It's calling on there, at least. There's a set aspect and get aspect.
Yeah.
And just like with the topology, it's type URI.
With that get aspect, how would you specify a particular aspect? You put it in the
you give it the message of the type. Oh, so in here I actually have omitted the example. It's the same. If you were to look at the top first line, you would create a blank one.
Right.
Oh.
You have a second attribute.
No, that's a mistake. It should be you would be creating. Let's say you wanted to retrieve a cell connection. That's a mistake. It's an omit. You would have to do UE-NIB cell connection. Yeah, let's just fix it right here, right? You would do this. You would do UE. Let's say you do cell. CC for cell connection, and you would do something like this: UE-NIB dot cell.
Oh, I see.
And this would be then CC.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a typo.
That's cell connection. There might be an ID, and you're specifying the ID.
No, you already have the object.
Oh, yes.
UE is the object. Yeah, I just had the parameter same as the object.
I see. Yeah.
So you don't need to do that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
That's basically what you would have to do, and then your CC would be populated with basically the information from there. Okay, so let's go back to here. And that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that because I was just a mess up on my part. Again, like with topology, it's atomics distributed map, except this time we didn't impose any strong consistency guarantees on it. So we basically were not checking under revision or the existence of the object. So basically, there's create and update is indistinguishable. Really.
Okay.
We provided them for.
Yeah.
It's just like with topology, it's designed to be horizontally scalable in the sense that we could instantiate multiple of these things. They do most, again, outside of the aspect index, which is cached on a server side, and it's recreated on startup.
Okay.
And for the most part, it's not really considered persistent state. Everything else is deferred to atomics, except no consistency guaranteed. Same thing with the project structure, it's just a pattern, cookie pattern command for main tree, package for everything else. Primarily, the principal ones are stored northbound, which the manager creates. And we do have some small set of integration tests for helmet. It's fairly straightforward. We have a CLI as well too for that.
Yeah.
So this is more of a kind of complete example. You would create the service client, provide some context, and then you would create the UE itself, which is again a very simple object. You apply the desired aspects to it, and then you go ahead proceed to create the UE.
Okay. Okay.
And you clearly can create an aspect with multiple different. UE with multiple different aspects. Yes.
So Thomas, the ID has to be unique across all apps.
Correct. Well, yeah. I mean, ID is unique to the specific user equipment. That's the.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's literally like it's supposed to be a hardware ID, basically.
Some sort of a. Usually, I mean, the thing is, it wouldn't be IMSI because IMSI is actually issued on a different plane.
We've had a lot of discussions with this and Sarah from product management. And there's a hardware ID, which might be a serial number. There's an ICC ID, which is the SIM number. There's an IMSI, which is the connection of the subscriber account and the SIM. And Scott, can you remember what the other one was? I think there was some other potential, like, and maybe there might be a user-friendly name as well, so what this UE would be, whether it would be the ICC ID, like for the SIM, or whether it would be the
I don't know
serial number.
I don't know, which is why it's designed as a
we're going to have a discussion on this tomorrow, but I think ultimately we might model both devices and SIM cards in either. And you would have a binding then from device to SIM card. So you could have a serial number for the phone and then an ICC ID for the SIM card. And then the ICC ID would then map to the IMSI and other details, I think ultimately, but we'll sort it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and if there is an enhancements to the system, or for example, with ability maybe to kind of alias entities where you want to keep everything under one umbrella, but with potentially accessing it by different IDs or having sort of secondary indices, I mean, we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole use case for Ether is kind of, it's a bit open. I mean, I was wondering if this was going to be something that would be suitable for UEs, from the SDRAN perspective. I mean, it looks like, something is going to be registering something in this UE.
Exactly.
NIB, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I honestly don't know what the identifier would be. I think there's still a discussion for identifier that's below the IMSI. What is the appropriate form of identifying the user equipment? And it's not trivial discussion, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, if you choose an ID that is just like a universally unique, like a UUID, and maybe that's not your key, then it is more difficult to look up this thing.
Well, you have to have then would then having some sort of a secondary index will be all the more important, right? Because
Yeah.
you need to be able to relate it to the real world entity that you
Yes.
observe by some, it gives you
Process
some
or something like this, yeah.
form of identification.
Yeah, yeah, because you want to search by that and,
Correct.
and not have to go through aspect after aspect, like to retrieve it.
And what part, you know, kind of at which control, is it a user plane, management plane, I don't know, access control plane,
Yeah.
I honestly don't know at which
yeah.
level, and maybe multiple that we may need to correlate the entity.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like what Scott was saying is, with Ether there will be like an inventory system where, for instance, well, that would be an inventory of SIMs, I guess. Yeah, and there will be probably an inventory of equipment as well. And so, say for instance, the SIM card is printed in a bulk or something like this, and then it's loaded into something. Then the association of that SIM card or device or UE or whatever it is from the inventory to actually something that's running in the SD core is another day's work, and something that's going to be managed by the user, and, you know, having QoS or MBRs or this kind of thing associated with it is another stage along in the process. So like we really have to design all of that. And, you know, I mean, I think the UE-NIB is potentially a good place for that, because I mean, my thoughts were that this is a network information base that could be shared across Ether, you know, and the SD-RAN, and, you know, various different things.
Especially if the subject matter is the same, pretty much. Right?
Yeah. Not to be keeping two lists of UEs in two different places, you know.
Yeah.
So,
which is why I think the secondary indices or these whatever other related enhancements are required. Definitely bring those up. So that in the case this does not fit the bill, we should at least figure out how far away it is from meeting the bill. And if it's close enough, then we should definitely enhance it. If it's not meeting the bill at all, well then then maybe a reason to do it separately. But
yeah. So I mean, the thing is from an Ether perspective, you know, there are certain things that need to be configured on a per UE basis, and one of them might even be something as simple as the UE name. But more importantly, there's probably there may be like I said, the MBRs, the uplink and downlink rate might be controlled on a per UE basis. Now, ONOS config is where we do our config, and so should we keep the configuration for those UEs inside ONOS config and, I don't know, make it available to the UE-NIB or have a cross reference to the UE-NIB or something like this? I'm not really sure how we should go about that, and I'm not even really sure how we decide what we do with it. But I mean, the fact that there's no strong consistency guarantees, I mean, you know, maybe it's not, you know, and there's no history or anything like this, configuration changes or anything like that, you know, maybe that's not the right place then to have things like the configuration of MB of
this may be just a current state.
It might be just the current state, but at least it's one kind of place to go, a source of truth about UEs, really, I suppose you could say. And
the other thing I think we need is, you know, for our use cases, I think we need sort of flexible filtering mechanisms. I know I think in Topo, you had the ability to filter by any key. You know, I could see here where we would want to search the UE database by, you know, its user-friendly display name, or its UEID, or its IMSI, or, you know, if IP address was in there, even do like reverse search based on IP address. So I think, you know, it's possible that searching and filtering could be something useful to us. I don't know if we can do that or not.
That's definitely within the realm of, I think that would stack reasonably well on top of this. Right now, the API was designed to be kind of, I guess, as simple as possible, because we really did not know that much about the use cases, other than the fact that we knew that applications would want to keep UE related data, and we didn't really necessarily have a clue about what kind of data that was going to be, because a lot of it's like KPI related data would be per UE, right?
Yeah.
And they mutate very often. So we knew that we wanted to, mutate things without necessarily all the impediment of consistent updates. But we should certainly be able to add query mechanisms or other kind of internal indices and things like that. But I think adding the consistency to it, I mean, probably would be really easy. It's just I'm not sure what the impact of it would be on the other usages.
So I mean, I think I'm thinking like, we will still have to keep the configuration per UE inside ONOS config anyway.
Exactly.
And maybe synchronize it to this so that you have one place to go, or maybe not. I don't know. We have to look into the use cases a bit more. I guess we should draw it out on a diagram. But I was just interested, like, how is this used from the SDRAN project perspective?
So right now we're just using it for storing KPI data.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. So that comes up through the E2 interface,
exactly.
and you write this across in the RIC out to the UE-NIB. I remember.
It's mostly about just observing the information from the environment.
Right. And so it's the XApps then pull their information from this then about UEs.
Exactly. I suppose it would be possible to store kind of the configuration information separately, even though it may reflect some of the information, some of the information of what should be, what kind of the odd versus is, it could be kept in separate places. And then you have a basis for kind of consolidating, making sure, adjusting to the differences.
Right.
So you could create an aspect for certain configuration that's expected to be on there, and that would be in a separate namespace from what is being populated by what you're seeing. And then you could look at the differences and say and act on those differences. One possibility.
So like you're kind of storing your version of your configuration as an aspect?
No, I'm just saying you would store it in an aspect of its own, where it's just for the purpose of the kind of enforcement. That could be useful. But you yourself wouldn't be able to version that, right?
That's fine.
Kind of like you said, you indicated it would have to be sort of synchronized.
Okay.
So the creation and update, there's very similar. The update is very similar to create in here, in a sense that we don't necessarily, because there's no revision to bump. We can just basically synthesize a new UE object with the proper ID and inject information into it and go ahead update it. You can basically slam completely over the previous one with no regard for version.
Right.
That's one difference.
Right. And in a distributed system, they could both be writing and it's the latest one wins.
But the idea here is that this is for highly volatile information. So the idea is that's going to get. I mean, if you have two applications writing the same piece of data in such an environment, then you're probably dealing with other issues.
I can see how it makes sense for statistics that you're writing.
List, again, this one is different because it's using streams and it would look very similar to the watch, except this is just a replay, not watching for future events. And this is an example how we look, for example, fish out, you get objects that have just a cell phone subscriber data aspects, and that's it.
Right.
And they won't get anything else.
Yeah.
I think there is a way, I think the default behavior, if you specify nil or empty list of aspects, you'll get all of them.
Oh, I see.
You could ask
I
for.
see.
In a case you wanted to have something that does things in kind of a stack agnostic way.
And you get them streamed then one by one, the aspects.
I actually, I don't know the implementation answer to that, whether you get them one by one or whether you'll get them all at once.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Okay.
Not sure.
It depends.
This is something
it depends on the list response. If you can hold more than one aspect, you probably.
Well, the list response can hold more than one aspect,
okay.
because it basically will give you the UE entity, which is an ID and a map of aspects.
Yeah.
So you can.
The
question of not whether and the reason I'm hesitating on this is both Francis and I worked on it, and I don't remember where we got left.
Right.
Originally, it was the supporting. We did not support the empty list, because basically that would require us to stream over everything. Then we added support for that, but they would stream everything, but everything was broken apart. Because we basically stored it as a because the index is actually the UE ID and the aspect type. And then there is an aspect on the other side. So we don't store all of the aspects, but we aggregate them on the way up. But I don't know for the list.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as like multiple components trying to update the same UE at the same time, I would think that components should be limited by aspect. So like only one component should be updating an aspect, and they should be multiple components should be able to update different aspects of the same. You're right.
Without any consistency problem. Okay.
And I wonder if we need consistency, we might be able to move the consistency to the aspect. Basically, where we could optionally enforce it if the aspect has a revision, then maybe we would be able to.
So some could be aware of it, and some might not. And
that might actually be a good compromise of. For some things, it's not appropriate for some things.
That could be a good feature.
Same as with Topo API, we have the CLI. Sorry, the Topo subsystem. We have the CLI for it. It's under UE-NIB usage. Follows the same pattern. Get, create, update, watch, all that stuff.
Okay.
With the same sort of flag options for listing the list of aspects.
So really, if we wanted to start with this, really all we need to do is just add the subchart for UE-NIB, and then we can start using the CLI. Well, it's that simple. Okay. And
then if you wanted to use, shove information of your own into there, you would just need to define the protobuf. And then, again, this is just like Topo, it's agnostic specific messages. So because they're stored in, they will get marshaled into JSON. So UE-NIB subsystem doesn't care.
So would you have to do a special build of UE-NIB? No,
it's because they're stored as JSON. Because when you
it's only on the client side.
It's on the application side, on the client side, where you have to have the awareness of the protocol. But your application would have that.
I get it.
Once it's passed over, it's passed over as any, and it's gonna get serialized into JSON, and you don't have to have access to the protocol.
Cool.
And that's a good point, Jordan. Thanks for bringing that up. I think that's it. We can see the similarities. There's some differences.
Thanks for that. That's good to know.
Is there any questions from folks on the remote end?
No, none here. This is very interesting.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions or point of discussion, we can probably just close up the meeting to give everybody